Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Apprenti Answers. I'm Carla Talanian. I'm the Consulting Director for Apprenti's Life Sciences Expansion. And with me today are two wonderful guests. I will let them introduce themselves. We have Sunny Schwartz from the Mass BioEd Foundation, and we have Malcolm Jeffers from the International Academy of Automation Engineering. So, Sunny, why don't you go first?
Sure. Thanks, Carla. My name is Sunny Schwartz. I'm the CEO of the Massachusetts Biotechnology Education Foundation, known as Mass BioEd, and we're a nonprofit dedicated to building and sustaining the life sciences workforce, particularly in Massachusetts.
Excellent. And Malcolm?
Hi, Carla. Lovely to be with you here today, Sunny as well. Malcolm Jeffers. I'm a transformation strategist and I head up research at the IAAE. Really passionate about developing the potential in people and really have been working on this for over a decade, really, as a not-for-profit organization also, focused on education, credentialing, and research. Thanks, Carla.
Excellent. Sunny, I'd like to start with you. So Mass Bioed's registered apprenticeship program for biomanufacturing technicians has now been running continuously since 2020 for about 6 years. Can you give us a brief overview of the program, including how many apprentices is served over these years, how many employer partners you have?
Yeah, sure. So we have served 176 apprentices in that time, and we've had um, I think 23 employer partners over the time. Some years. I think right now, this year, we have 10 employer partners. And I think one thing that's really unique about the program and unique about apprenticeship is that the employers are so involved and the employers select candidates to go into the apprenticeship program before they even start training. So our team will recruit, screen, candidates knowing what the employers are looking for. And then if an employer wants five apprentices, we'll send them 10 to interview. They interview those 10, they tell us which five they'd like to hire. So immediately upon finishing the educational portion, they go to that employer. So it's in that way pretty much a guaranteed job for people. And that's what makes it unique having a registered apprenticeship in this way versus a traditional job training program where you train people and then you place them in a job after, and there may or may not be a job for them, and the employer may or may not want to hire them. We used to call that in workforce development the hope and pray method. So for this program in particular, we have like a 90% placement rate. So it's extremely high given the model that we're using. And we have done primarily biomanufacturing technicians, but we also have tracks for lab support specialists and clinical trial associates where we've done a little over a dozen of each of those two.
Excellent. That's great. And let's go down a little bit deeper. What kind of skills does this program teach the apprentices? Or maybe you could actually begin by talking about the front-loaded model where they're getting that education before they start their on-the-job training.
Yeah. So the biomanufacturing technician training, which we've done the most of, it's 15 weeks upfront training before they go into their year of on-the-job training. And that includes both technical skills, um, upstream, downstream manufacturing processes, including things like monitoring growth cultures, clean room sterilization processes, learning compliance, learning, gowning up, making everything in a sterile environment. The curriculum also includes math, biology, chemistry, and what we used to call soft skills, professional skills, and really an introduction to the industry. So they get both kind of that upfront academic training as well as some hands-on training in a lab, all before they go to the company to do their year of on-the-job training.
Excellent. And what do these apprentices look like when they first come into the program? What's a typical background?
Oh, it really varies. So our team is great at recruiting people. We're really looking for people who have the attitude and aptitude for the job rather than someone with a traditional credential. So a college degree is not a requirement. Some people may have some college. It's not required. They don't need a scientific background. Many of the candidates have transferable skills from working in retail. We've recruited people who are Uber drivers, people who are in hospitality, people who maybe work at Dunkin' Donuts and they've learned great customer service and precision. So it's a different kind of candidate than an employer would normally recruit through their normal recruitment methods.
Absolutely. That's great. And what are the benefits specifically for the apprentices? Why should they choose an apprenticeship program as opposed to enrolling in a community college and a more traditional kind of program, for example?
Well, first of all, love community college. Don't want to say anything bad about college or community college because that's a great if that works for people. I would often say actually choosing college is a great option, but it's not always an option for people, both because of money and time. And so apprenticeships offer a quicker path to getting to a job. So the average age of our apprentice is 33. So we're not looking at people right out of high school, right, who might have that benefit of time where they can go to college for 2 or 4 years. Our apprentices tend to be people who have a lot of responsibilities. Maybe they have kids, maybe they want to buy a house, so they're ready for a job. They're not, wanting to do 4 years of school. And we know when you're working, 4 years of school becomes 8 years, and they don't have that kind of time or money. So a benefit is, as I mentioned, 90% job placement. Our average placement wage is nearly $31 an hour, which represents a $20 an hour wage gain from before someone started our program until after. And some of those apprentices were unemployed before, and some were employed. So for the ones who were employed, it's about a 60% wage gain from the wage they had before to the wage that they end the program with. So I would, if someone offered me a 60% wage gain, I'd be like, I'm in. And I think for our candidates, many are also going from 2 or 3 part-time jobs without benefits to now one full-time job, professional job with benefits, with really the potential for career growth. Whereas they might have been at more of what we call underemployed, where they're not using all of their skills. They're now in a professional role. As you know, many of these companies have tuition reimbursement. So if they do want to go to school, now they can do it in the context of them working. And it really opens doors to the biotech industry for people who really wouldn't have been able to access the industry without this program.
Yeah. And I think that well, those financial statistics are so impressive, but the age of 33, I think that's something most people, when they think of apprenticeships, they think of younger people, young adults, people who are just graduating from high school or, in that 18 to 22-year-old bracket. But having the average age of 33 brings a level of maturity and responsibility to this that I think most employers really, really appreciate. And I'm just going to stick with you for a few more minutes, carrying on that note of the benefits to the employers. What other benefits does apprenticeship bring to the employers as opposed to hiring in a more traditional fashion?
Oh, yes. I mean, as I mentioned, we've had 23 employer partners, and that's for a reason because I think the employers really see great benefit to partnering on a registered apprenticeship program. So I think a few things. One is it's trained talent and they're trained for that role. So a lot of times people go to school and they may be learning a lot of things that they don't need for that job, but we've developed the curriculum in partnership with employers so that we know it's the skills that employers really need. So they come ready to hit the ground running. I mentioned the 90% placement rate. So we're getting people into the roles. We are providing diverse talent for people, so helping companies to meet their diversity goals. So over this time, about 2/3 of our apprentices have been people of color, over half are women and 40% are immigrants. So we know this industry could use some help on creating a more diverse workforce, which brings, all sorts of new opinions and backgrounds, which is all the better for the companies and their products. And I think the other thing is this is talent that employers wouldn't be able to find without us because they shouldn't have to. Employers are used to certain ways of recruiting talent. We're looking in places that employers don't look, like one-stop career centers and community-based organizations and immigrant learning centers. So we're finding new talent and expanding the pie of employees for them to access. We're also doing the recruiting and screening for them, so that saves them time and money in that. And because the talent I mentioned might be going from 2 or 3 jobs to one, they're really excited for these jobs. So sometimes employers, I think, hire people who have education beyond what is needed for a role. And
Mhm.
when that happens, that candidate is just chomping at the bit to get a promotion or, go to their next job or go somewhere else. The talent through the apprenticeship program are so happy for the role that they tend to want to stay in that role. So, because we've been running this program for a number of years, we have retention rates and we have 80% retention after 2 years. So, that also helps employers with not having high turnover and having to retrain people. And we've actually seen 20, about a quarter of our apprentices have been promoted as well. So they're staying with the companies. So all of those reasons, hit the ground running, staying loyal, diversity. So lots of benefits for employers.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Um, so this is going to be open up to both Sunny and Malcolm. Besides biomanufacturing technicians, what are the other career pathways that you both think are the most apprenticeable, that would have the most potential for new apprenticeship development?
I can start, Malcolm. As I mentioned, we do have apprentice opportunities open for what we call a lab support specialist, which is someone who isn't a scientist, but they're doing everything in the lab aside from the science, in helping the scientists be able to do their job, and then for a clinical trial associate. We also did a survey recently of employers to see what other occupations we should be thinking about developing apprenticeships in. Um, and the news, I would say, isn't great. So we're looking for occupations that can be done, trained in a short enough period of time, so under 6 months for the training, and that they hire a lot of them. And so what our survey showed was the occupation that came up the most was like an automation technician. So about 75% of the company said, yeah, that's a good one. But then we asked them the follow-up question and said, okay, how many of these would you be hiring in the next 5 years? And the number was very small. And same with like kind of the second most popular choice was like a quality assurance, quality control technician, but similarly not high volumes. And so that's why we focused on biomanufacturing because it's something where companies hire a lot of them, where I think we've seen less traction in like a clinical trial associate because companies may only hire one every year or one even every other year. So we're just not seeing the volume in other occupations. But Malcolm, I'm curious if you have a different answer.
Yeah, happy to share. I've been fascinated by some of the statistics you've shared. I've long been an admirer of mass bio ed and what you're doing, and some of those numbers, both in terms of placement and retention, are just phenomenal. So keep up the work on that front. It's fantastic. In terms of Carla's question around the particular roles, there's two I'll really mention. One is, and we've come to term it, an AI-enabled automation technician for life sciences manufacturing. I'll speak in a few minutes maybe about that disruption that's coming, I suppose, or has come to industry in terms of the extra skilling needed for some of these individuals. But that automation technician role, obviously, given our organization, we're keen to see people skilled and equipped as in the field of automation. And then there's one other I'll add. Last week, I had an opportunity to be part of a roundtable of industry leaders who are very much focused on the future of industrial automation for their organizations. So many of those who've made investments in recent months were represented at this roundtable. and they were mentioning a real focus now on robotics. So we think this focus on a robotics technician, again, AI-enabled robotics technician for life sciences manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of questions from these people around the different automated warehouse robotics, AGVs and AG. There's a whole string of acronyms about the different types of robotics and mobile robotics that these companies are using. But we do think there's going to be a need for those who can then both program, maintain, operate these technologies as well. So that would be from our perspective, Carla.
Yes, well, that tees up my next question to you perfectly, Malcolm. You said a robotics technician, not a robotic technician, which would be very
Correct.
different things.
Correct.
So sticking with AI and automation, I think everyone understands, at least on a very superficial level, this is going to drastically change the landscape for new hires and for entry-level work across many, many industries, not just biotech. Um, Recently, I was looking at Bioprocess International just published a report on workforce, and they claim a 70% skills gap in digital and automation skills specific to biomanufacturing workers. So that sounds very serious. What do you see as the particular skill sets that are increasingly necessary? So if there are people in the audience who are college faculty or community college instructors, like what do they need to think about adding to their curriculum to get their students ready?
Hmm. So there's long answers to that question, but I'll try to put a few thoughts that I suppose I've been trying to distill over the last few years on this point. I think the first point I'd like to make is not to react to the what we're seeing, and rather be very thoughtful around these transversal skills that I know Sunny mentioned. Mindset is a key thing. The balance of learning, unlearning, or relearning. Individuals will need this through their entire careers. So I think whoever's educating these individuals and involved in shaping them, that mindset around long life learning, not just lifelong learning, is really important, because even when they are employed in these future positions, and that's maybe the goal for many, if you're on listening to this now and you're keen to be in an apprenticeship, to be able to land a good, well-paying job, then one of those kind of points I'd like to make is the mindset around I will be continually learning my whole life, even within this new role. It's not like I just need to get over this little jump of learning and then I'm set. These companies expect their people to be learning all the time. And that's just, it's good to set expectations on that front. And these are muscles and skills we learn all through life around how to learn new information, unlearn some old habits. That's a key part as well. And then also relearn. So that's I suppose a key point. It's less technical, but actually I think primary to make. The second I'd like to make, I suppose, is there really is a significant shift in the technologies that are being used by these organizations. So actually, there's a bit of a dilemma. There's many kind of more legacy install-based technologies that still need to be maintained and operated and used, and the training for those is still really important. But there is a new, I suppose, a wave of investment in new technologies. And I won't get into all the technicalities of it, but what it means is the way that data is both generated, captured, and assessed and analyzed and used to inform decisions is changing a lot of these organizations. They're really putting in new kind of architectures for how they gather and use their data. And there's an expectation on people who join those organizations to kind of work with multiple systems. And that can sound a little paralyzing. And I've spoken with some recently just asking, like, how are you adopting or taking on these technologies? And there's a little bit of a kind of a natural anxiety sometimes, which is very understandable. But I think when now with the kind of the wave of AI investment, people are maybe even more kind of apprehensive around what will this mean for either the job I'm doing, or in the case of people apprenticeships, what will it mean for the job I'd like to do? And again, I'd like to just bring a voice of calm and reason to this. These technologies are to enable and equip people for better work to produce better medicines that are needed by so many people. And many of the companies that Sunny and other organizations work to support, they produce life-saving medicines and devices. And I think keeping that purpose in mind, and then we use these technologies to best manufacture those products and medicines, that's the right framing. And then it's about, well, once we know our purpose, then it's about what skills. So
Mhm.
there's classical automation skills, there's more new or next gen automation is the way we phrase it, skills. but it's possible. But attitude and aptitude, Sonny, they go a long way.
That's, yeah. Out of hundreds of employer conversations I've had over, 10 years, it always boils down to those soft skills, the attitude, the aptitude, the intellectual curiosity, the ownership and responsibility. And we certainly take that to heart in all of the apprenticeship programs that are being developed. There's a component of soft skills in there and specific to the industry, because those skills that might be needed in somebody who is in the banking sector, for example, are not necessarily the same. It's not the same mindset as somebody who is working in a highly regulated manufacturing facility. So they need to be a little more bespoke, perhaps. Um, Excellent. Yeah. So as you brought up, we've, just throughout the entirety of 2025, we kept hearing about lots of pharmaceutical companies announcing plans to reshore their manufacturing, which sounds like great news for those of us in workforce development. But what we're really seeing in the immediate sense is a lot of layoffs. And that's because in order to build these new buildings, a lot of older facilities are being sunsetted. Maybe the incumbent workforce is being laid off while the facility is refurbished, or a new one is being built to replace it. So what do we do with this existing workforce? How can we specifically structure apprenticeship pathways to upskill and reskill people like that so that they will be better equipped to work in these newly massively automated systems?
Well, I think it's been very instructive to read some of the job specs these companies are producing for these new facilities. And I think if someone's listening today and they're thinking around, well, surely that's a huge jump for me to kind of to be able to even think about working with all of those. Am I really out of my depth here? And I just encourage those of you who are maybe on that fence around that decision. Um, I think it's really important to go, these are technologies to make the manufacturing safer for the people who work there, to keep the quality of those medicines and products high, and actually, when designed well, are designed to help you as an individual get information you need when you need it at the right time for the right purpose every time. So that's if the designs if those designing those systems are doing a good job like they should, those systems should be intuitive to use. That's where good system design comes. And a lot of the work we do is helping train and educate around design of these systems so they are more human centric. So I just encourage those who maybe there is an aspect of learning those technical skills. We can't all learning is effortful. You might have that phrase, but it really is. And there's an aspect of learning. And if you're watching this and you're going, well, that's easy for you three to say. You're in roles. You're doing this. This is what you do. As recently as last year, I took a short 12-week course that was quite painful. I was way out of my depth, and I did it because I wanted to remind myself it's you need to learn new things all the time, and it's really important. And it was like a key kind of overview on biopharmaceutical, the more of the biology side rather than what was my background, the technology side. And so we're always needing to stretch ourselves. So please be encouraged. It is possible to push through and go through it with others. I think that's a key part of our learning as individual, doing it with others. And I'm sure Sunny might have good examples of those who go through as a cohort of apprentices, and that's a great way of being able to do it together.
Excellent. And on that note, I do want to add, Apprenti is currently working on developing new national standards for an automation for life science automation technician roles. And while we're really focusing on the entry level worker to begin with, taking a lead from Malcolm's organization, the IAAE, eventually what we'd like to do is have a whole career pathway sequenced out through apprenticeship. So someone can start at the associate level, go through an apprenticeship, maybe get a few extra years of work under their belt, and then perhaps through another apprenticeship program, work their way up to the professional classification of automation engineer, and then even on forward to an expert level. kind of much the way in that traditional trades people go from apprentice to journeyman to master over several years. We can do that, and we can do it through the apprenticeship model. Excellent. I want to go back to Sunny. Can you talk a little bit more about the particular challenges or the particular, whether they're logistical or whether they're just sort of mental ideas? What roadblocks do you typically see when you're trying to onboard a new employer?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle for the employers is headcount.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned they're committing to at least hiring that person through the year of on-the-job training. We hope that then we'll hire them permanently um, after that year, but they're not committing to that. But even to bring them on for that year of OJT, um, when budgets are tight, when companies are laying people off, it's a tall order. So with biomanufacturing and some of these other roles, the work has to happen anyway. And sometimes these layoffs are happening at higher levels, and these are entry level roles where there is turnover, even if there isn't growth. So there is opportunity. So we've continued to run the program, but it hasn't grown in the way that it was looking like it was going to grow immediately post COVID when companies were just hiring so many people. So I guess what we've done to mitigate that is we've tried to make it easier for employers. So when we first started the program, when employers couldn't find enough people, we had a lot of rules. So they had to bring on the apprentice onto the company's payroll rather than going through a contractor, and they had to be on the company's benefits. So we've relaxed that. So that companies can use a contractor for that year of on-the-job training. They still are paid. There's a certain, wage that they're paid, but they may not have access to full company benefits. So as long as we're upfront with the candidates, we feel like that's fine because for the candidate, it still might be a much better job than they've had. And then it's up to them if they want to participate. So I think relaxing that a little bit has helped. And then I think just pointing to the success of the program, lowering employers' costs as far as recruiting and screening talent, and lowering employer costs as far as turnover costs, which are real costs for employers since we have such a high retention rate.
Excellent. Yeah, those are excellent talking points for sure. We're almost at time. I'm just going to ask both of you if there's anything you'd like to add before we open it up to some questions.
No, we'd love to hear people's questions.
Yeah, Malcolm?
Not just now, maybe it'll come to mind before the end, but I think it's been a great conversation and excited to see this work really expand and really extend opportunity to those who would seek it. I think it's a brilliant time in industry to seek employment in this sector, and delighted to be part of this. So thanks again for the invite.
Fabulous. I do see a question on LinkedIn Live that I'm sure none of you can see. So I just wanted to bring that one up first. As biomanufacturing moves towards biopharma 4.0, how are you ensuring that technician apprentices aren't just following SOPs, but are also comfortable interacting with the automated systems that execute them?
Malcolm, I believe that falls
Really
in
good
your
question.
in
I'm
your
glad to
wheelhouse.
hear the phrase Pharma 4.0 come through. So an organization called the ISPE have proposed a way of thinking about if you think of the industrial revolutions and the way that the life sciences organization is positioned, Pharma 4.0 refers to the fourth industrial revolution, but it is a holistic view of all of the aspects of end-to-end manufacturing, but also everything from technology, culture, people, skills, everything, a holistic view. And particularly to this question around, say, for example, the example that was given, I think it's about we're trying to educate and train and develop people to be thoughtful decision makers with information rather than simply following a system given prompt. I think that's a key point to make here, especially in the technician roles will be less and less about just trying to follow what a machine is telling them to do and more about the thoughtful what should it be doing, why should it be doing it, what is unusual, what pattern am I noticing, and then using the tools that these employers are putting in and infrastructure to leverage things they can't see. As humans, we're incredibly good at some things, and machines are incredibly good. My background's in electronic engineering and I am computing, so I really enjoy looking at what machines can do, and they can do incredible. They can spot patterns we can't, but we need to it's we need to govern them and use them to produce the outcomes we want. So a lot of the education of those in these roles will be around, is what I'm seeing expected? Is if it's not, to have that ability to challenge and do that with appropriately within the systems of that organization. So there's a huge need to train people differently, and that's why I'm excited about these apprenticeships, having the opportunity to maybe look at the kind of typical, more technical content around 80% and maybe 20% on the AI enabled piece. Because using AI technologies requires a new way of thinking that is going to be more and more needed. You know, all of us in all of our roles, but especially in these apprenticeship roles we've been discussing.
Yeah. Let's see. A question came through in the chat, which Sunny, I'm going to ask you to answer. How do we ensure apprentices gain visibility and aren't overlooked after completion of the program?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a non-issue in the way that we have designed the program because, the apprentices are basically automatically almost getting a job offer. And so that's great. So they're not overlooked there. We've also built in mentorship for the apprentices so that they have someone that they can ask questions to who isn't their boss. Because sometimes you're starting a new role, it's very foreign, and you might just have a question that you're not comfortable asking someone in your organization. So we've built in mentors that are outside of the person's organization, and they continue to get support from our staff for as long as they need it. So we haven't really had that issue, thankfully.
Excellent. And Malcolm, this one is going to get tossed to you. Where do digital twins fall in the equation of biopharma training, if any at all?
Great question. So lots of definitions would be needed here. What is a digital twin? And I'm going to say that the change in the data in architecture in these organizations, especially the greenfield sites, they're going to be capturing and using data differently, and it sets up the ability to use more advanced solutions like digital twins. And it very much is the future of biopharma, and therefore must be the future of biopharma training. Some would look at this question and go, oh, that's a number of years away. It's not. It's being applied and used now. But what people understand a digital twin to be is as many opinions as you'll have people in the room. So during a project 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had an opportunity to implement one with a manufacturer of advanced sequencing hardware, and it was a really interesting project, and actually produced some outputs from that might be of interest to those listening today. That's a download on our resource center. And one of those challenges was to really look at how do we frame the value of a digital twin. And that's, I suppose, for those considering those technologies.
Mhm.
But also we had some workforce implications. Obviously, that's my passion. It's seeing, well, how do we proactively equip people with the knowledge and the skills to decide whether these technologies are suitable and helpful. And that's again through the lens of purpose. We don't just do a technology first approach. Will it add the business value and the quality or medicine, the quality to the product? If so, then we look at, well, how do we design and implement it? But we must have training for that. It's going to be part, you can get incredible advances. I think one company I heard at a presentation a year ago, they were almost halving their costs on some particular implementation of digital twin technology. It has massive value and shouldn't be discounted simply because it's a nebulous term.
Excellent. And the next question, Malcolm, is for you also. It says AI is not going to eliminate roles, but rather augment roles. 7 of the top 8 big pharma companies have started applying AI in R&D and discovery. Will future workforce development be including and prioritizing AI training in future programs?
So the short answer is yes. Again, a lot of assumptions in that question around what AI is, and that's important to kind of go into the nuance of, and it certainly should be prioritized in the training. AI covers a broad range of technologies, but in the biopharma and especially the space we're talking about, a lot of it is machine learning applications, and there is huge value to be gained from those technologies. So it certainly will. It's not just the large language model interfaces that many of us have now become familiar with and use often. It's not just those. Those would be an aspect of how they can be used, or this technology set can be used. But there's many that have actually been in place for decades, but are now getting more limelight because of the larger focus socially. But for sure, that training will be needed.
Yeah, I can add in here too, Carla. So for sure, the answer is yes on AI, and it will be integrated into all workforce development programs, and all incumbent worker programs as well. And so another part of Mass Bioed is we provide courses for people who work in the industry now, called our professional training courses. And we're right now developing a new course around AI and how to integrate AI into the work that we're all doing in the life sciences industry.
Excellent, thank you. I think I just had a couple of thank yous coming through the chat. I think that's it for questions. Yes. So with that, I'm going to draw this to a close. Thank you both very, very much for participating in this today. This has been a lovely conversation. Hopefully get some really good information out there.
Thank you so much, Carla. Lovely to be on with you, Sonny. And it is a good journey ahead, and encourage those listening to really to grab those opportunities and to support those who do.
Agreed. Thanks so much to Carla and to Apprenti for sponsoring this, and happy National Apprenticeship Week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
Carla.
time and a great session. And we hope to see you guys tomorrow at our HR and workforce session. Thank you again so much, Malcolm and Sunny and Carla, for all of your hard work. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.